Good afternoon and welcome to Footy Talks Live. Luke, Stephen and KJ with you for the next hour. 13 Major League Soccer matches taking place last night involving 26 teams. That's the most teams in Major League Soccer that have ever been involved on the same day in games. So there's plenty for us to get to over the course of the next hour. We want your questions as well, whether it's TFC related or anything else to do with MLS or the game around the world. You can go for that as well. KJ, you had a pretty late night last night. After the TFC game, we were able to head home. And what time did you get into bed last night after that West Coast game?
2 a.m. and I was up at 7 this morning to take my daughter to school. So
you're a good guy.
You're gonna carry me through the show today, boys. Much like you carried us all through an entertaining broadcast last night. Let's be honest. I mean, I was in the studio with Kelsey. You guys are doing the heavy lifting.
Well, and that's why Stevie thoroughly deserved his free meal at TSN last night, obviously. Whereas, you probably should have had a free meal the amount of time you were there, KJ.
Yeah, let's just fill in the viewers the background to the story. So occasionally we get free stuff from TSN, and this time was a meal. So if you're there for a double header, you get sent a menu, and you can pick from the menu, and you're allowed to do it, and you both are on there. And Stevie comes in and he's not working a doubleheader, but he gets his free meal as he's entitled to. He works hard for the company, and in comes Wildman, like the athlete that he is, strolling in 5 minutes before the broadcast and just chastising Colwell for eating a free meal as if like he's not allowed to have it. It was
just jealous, wasn't he?
I don't know what his point was, to be honest.
Was it good butter chicken?
It was lovely. It
was salad.
Fantastic. The Niner Diner excelled itself there.
There you go.
Very good. Well, after that, of course, it was the TFC against New York City FC. It's Footy Talks presented by Benjamin Moore. And right off the top of the show, let's just look back on what happened last night. We'll get to the Benjamin Moore player of the game in a few moments' time. But first off, I think it's fair to say it wasn't TFC's best night, but they found a way to get the job done against a team, KJ, that was unbeaten in 6 matches. Had won all 3 games they'd played, the home games that they were playing at Red Bull Arena since the restart, and generally have been pretty strong, although they haven't been scoring as many goals as they would like. So I think Greg Vanney went in there with an understrength side, and they found a way to get the job done.
Yeah, the game's a funny one. That's why we love it, I suppose. I don't think TFC probably on the basis of the performance deserved to win the game, but much like the game before, where they didn't deserve to draw the game, they deserved to win it. They didn't get the points there, so they get them back here. I couldn't help but think about that game in Orlando where New York dominated them in the knockout stages and won by 3 goals to, was it 0 or 3-1 in the end? I can't remember. But yeah.
Don't forget Patrick Mullins.
Yeah.
Don't forget Patrick Mullins.
I can't forget any number 13 for TFC. But I would just think at that point, I thought there was a potential message that New York could have delivered where, they were bullied by TFC. They continued to be bullied by them, and they went out and did something different in that game. And maybe it was a bit of a history-defining match. Ultimately, TFC have since said, we weren't really that up for that game. It didn't know whether it mattered anything. And last night kind of proved it. That, again, I think that there's a little bit of a bogey team here developing for New York City FC. And they created so many chances. Alex Bono, I'm sure we'll get to in a second, was tremendous on the night. But TFC looked pretty organized. New York City FC, Stephen, looked devoid of ideas in the final third. They dominated so many facets of the match, but TFC looked like the team that knew how to win, or at least knew how to dig deep and try and get something. Well, New York City FC, I don't think are quite as far along as in that kind of development as a maturation as a team.
Yeah, they were lacking some serious confidence in front of goal. Everything was good for New York City till it came to their box, or TFC's box, and the last final pass or final finish just was never quite to the quality needed to break TFC down. I think it was unusual and interesting, KJ, because of that game in Orlando where TFC more often than not play the role of the hunters, don't they? They go, they're the aggressors, they take the game to the opposition. They did the same in Orlando, and they got caught on the night by a really good New York City side who were on the front foot, pressed them well, stifled them, and really dominated the game, scored the goals at the right times, and embarrassed them a little bit. And so I think that there was a little bit of that coming into this game for Greg Vanney's men, and they were reluctant to allow that same game plan to happen. So we saw a more direct TFC, we saw a different formation, we saw a TFC playing the role of the hunted in a sense for once, and just kind of sitting in, absorbing pressure and and waiting on their moments. And the press never really came from New York City, in my opinion. It was never really there. Maybe because TFC played so direct, but in the end, as New York City started missing chance after chance, and TFC were bedding in, I didn't feel like they were going to concede a goal. I also didn't feel like they were going to score a goal. I thought it was going to be 0-0, but they're a team that always seem to just have a moment. You know, it's usually quality. This time it was fortunate with that Acevedo handball. And then once the ball was put down in the penalty spot after the debacle a few weeks ago, it wasn't going to be the same again. Pozzuelo was going to show his composure, put it away. And there they go, you know, hopping out of Harrison, New Jersey with 3 points in a game where it was probably their worst performance in a number of months for me, maybe even years in terms of on the ball. But it doesn't matter if you get the points. They went with a game plan, they executed it, defended well, goalkeeper was great, and it was a big win, Luke, with a big game coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, that game coming up we'll look ahead to is against Columbus Crew that are the top of the Eastern Conference right now. TFC sitting in fourth. There's a bit of a logjam in that top four after last night's action. Everybody was involved last night. You've got Columbus on 30 points at the top, and then you've got Orlando, Philadelphia, and TFC all on 25. And then a bit of a gap to fifth place with New England Revolution on 18, which is 7 points back with my math straight off the hop there.
Well done, mate.
I was a little bit nervous as I started going there, and I managed to do that one.
Well, you can learn counting by watching Whitecaps games these days.
Okay, we'll get onto that a little bit later on. The Benjamin Moore play of the game is the Pozzuelo penalty. So producer Kev can share the screen and we'll take a look at this one. And so many interesting storylines surrounding a penalty kick. Not just the fact that this is the last minute of the game or, you know, a couple of minutes to go. Not only the fact that it's 0-0, not only the fact that TFC screwed up their last penalty that they took with Piatti, but also the fact that Pozzuelo has faced Sean Johnson a number of occasions before, and in all different manners. He's the only keeper that saved a penalty from Pozzuelo. He's faced two Panenkas, including one on the debut, one in the last minute of the playoff game. This Pozzuelo-Sean Johnson thing has lived for a while already, KJ. He's let in more penalties against TFC than any other team in Major League Soccer. And it seems as if it's going to just keep on going between Pozzuelo and Sean Johnson. Yeah,
it does. I wonder if producer Kev can just rack it back a little bit and try and pause it to the moment Pozzuelo does his backlift. And I just want to show people if they can see it when if you can rewind it back a little bit to the moment, particularly on the live shot when Pozzuelo has the backlift, because right now he's got Sean Johnson on toast.
He doesn't know what to do, does he?
He's got no idea. He has no idea. And that's not a knock on Sean Johnson. It's a compliment to Pozzuelo and the development. And I know Pozzuelo, this is all calculated going forward. You know, he now knows what he's thinking. You know, this is a whole procedure going forward. But when you see him standing there, he's petrified because he thinks he's already got me twice on a Panenka. Surely he can't do it again. Is he going to go down the middle? And if you think before he goes on the back lift, he still can't move. And so, you know, the Pozzuelo, I think, you know, I even talked about this on the goal that he scored a couple of weeks ago. He really hides the shot anyway, Stephen, not just a penalty, but he does a great job of disguising a shot, I think, in general, even when you know he's going to hit it with the right foot. And he does a great job on the penalties. There's not many people better, you know, that can hide that shot. He doesn't know which side he can go to. You know, he hasn't really gone to a goalkeeper's right yet. Still hasn't done that yet. But the story continue with those two 5 times now, obviously, that he's met. And Pozzuelo's only been in MLS less than 2 years. So, and the other thing is, it's the 90th minute. It was the 90th minute in the playoffs when he scored the goal. He's had a 94th minute penalty against Atlanta to win it. You know, there's all sorts of nicknames for Mr. 12 yards right now, but Iceman is another one because he's just, it's remarkable, isn't it, Stephen, that when the game is on the line, the coolness and the calmness of this man just adds, I guess, to the qualities.
Yeah, I tried to build the moment up on air, saying he must be feeling a bit of pressure here and you know, feeling the moment, but he wasn't, was he?
No.
He just looked like he was
he had to. He had to have been something in his mind after what happened at BMO with that penalty with Piatti. Surely that weighs on him a little bit, even if he doesn't show it. You think he can just... He's that superior mentally in that situation that he can just like freeze out.
Yeah,
I do, and I think it's a special quality in the mentality, like you said. I think it's a ton to do with the quality of his striking the ball, like KJ says, the disguise he puts in it. He doesn't have to look at the ball like most mere mortals, and when I say mere mortals, I mean professional football players, have to look down at the ball as they kick it. But this guy just knows where it is and is comfortable with, the connection that he gets on it. So he's allowed to keep his eyes up straight, looking at Sean Johnson the entire time. It was under no circumstances going to be Penenka on that penalty. That's all he was thinking about, Sean Johnson.
Yeah.
He was just thinking, there's no way this can happen to me a third time. He waits, and in the end, he just loses his balance because Pozzuelo's calmer than him. He slots it in the net. It's remarkable from Pozzuelo. It's a coolness and an assuredness, a confidence and arrogance, whatever you want to say, but it's deadly from 12 yards. And he's a guy that is going to miss very few penalties in his TFC career, in my opinion. I think maybe the Piatti incident will stand him in good stead, because he's not going to try that again, surely. And so
I think he will.
You think he will?
I think he will, yeah. I actually don't think, I don't know this, but I've spent some time with him talking about penalties. I bet you he doesn't regret anything about that Piatti incident either.
Well,
I really don't.
About it, isn't he? Saying he doesn't regret it.
Right, so there you go. So I didn't see that. But, the other thing too is that he mentally processes the matchups with goalkeepers. So as I said before, the Clement Diop, he'd already taken a penalty not long before that. He'd taken one against him in the penalty shootout last year in the Canadian Championship. It's a different look against Clement Diop. What does it mean? What does it mean for the next time I meet him? It's the same with the calculation of Sean Johnson. And goalkeepers all around the world, all around the league, all goalkeeper coaches, they'll all be examining something from him. But every single run-up is the same. He doesn't give, there's no tells. There's no tells in his run-up. There's nothing he shows in the run up to the ball until he kicks the ball that shows you where he's going to put it. And they'll examine it to a finite detail. That's what high professional sports are. But it's all about that. I used to watch, you watch high professional sports, cricketers running in right now with the bowling, or rugby place kickers or NFL kickers. Fran Botica used to kick for Wigan when he was a rugby league. He never
what a name that is from the past. No one's heard of him, but you're probably watching this today.
Johnny Wilkinson, who won a World Cup for England. It's about the by perfect design, exactly the way they build up to strike the ball, exactly right away, every single time, the same every time. And he's got that down to a T. And even the greatest penalties in the world right now, the penalty takers in the world, you think about them, Hazard, whoever it is, they don't necessarily have that. They still have a little bit of a difference in the build-up. But, Pozzuelo, 10 penalties in MLS, and I haven't seen anything different in his run-up so far.
Well, when you look at that game last night, there was one thing, Stevie, that you're not now the only Scottish player to play for Toronto FC. So is there a little bit of you died last night with that not now being the case?
Every good team has a Scot in it, Luke. You can look at history. So TFC have got every chance of winning MLS Cup this year now that Tony Gallagher's joined. What
did you think of him coming in last night? And last night was exactly the sort of night that Greg Vanney brought him here for. A busy week. You've got 3 games. What doesn't want to ride Justin Morrow all game, every game? You've got Auro still out injured, so Larea can't come across. You get 60 minutes out of Gallagher, and then you can bring on someone like Morrow, who we've seen before can impact the game at both ends of the pitch for the final half an hour.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think at Morrow's age and where he is in this season, you can say, and I'll ask KG's opinion on this, I think he's got some views, that you can ask Morrow to come on and say, right, you're 30 minutes, put everything into it, get forward, be a thrust on that left-hand side, a bit like Morrow evolved. I've not seen a lot of him really getting forward this season because I think he's conserving a bit of energy. So, and I can understand that. We've all done that as players. You conserve energy when you're feeling tired. When you're on in the first minute, you think, okay, I need to make sure I've got someone in the tank in the 80th minute. So you do play within yourself sometimes. But with having Gallagher there to play 60, 65 minutes and then Morrow with just a finite amount of time at the end is interesting. I thought he was comfortable. I thought he was assured on the ball and he dealt with the overloads and wasn't erratic in the slightest. And I think that's promising. I felt for him a little bit that he was in that type of TFC performance, which, probably comes round one in every 20, 30 games. So the lad's going to have better nights in terms of being on the ball, expressing himself more in future games. But do you agree with my point, KG, and giving Morrow that kind of window of time to say, right, put everything into a third of this match and let's see your best. And Gallagher and him might have more moments like that where they kind of swap in for each other.
Yeah, I think they need to give Justin the opportunities to be when he's on the field, he can maximize everything he's got. And I think it's fair to say that sometimes he's probably struggled physically to do that this season. And yeah, I agree with you. I think I do think there's a clear idea the way TFC want to attack down the right hand side, whether it be Richie Laryea or Auro. And so I think your left-sided player needs to be a little bit more conservative. I think Tony Gallagher last night, it was almost like he almost sat like a back three sometimes. It was so conservative. I think it was clear by design. He almost in the same line as his centre backs at some point. So I think that's clear because they can give the freedom of the park a little bit more to Richie Laryea. I do think for the team to reach upper echelons of the next level, and maybe we keep talking about that, but I do think they lack crosses. I think they really lack crosses, particularly to attack the byline. I think if you're an opposition fullback and you play TFC, you think for the most part, everything's in front of me. I'm not going to worry about overlaps in wide areas and ping, 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 and you're behind me, much like the way LAFC played last night. If you watch the way LAFC played last night, I haven't seen the heat maps yet, but I would imagine that it would be all pinned towards the byline in their attacking zones. You don't see that at all in TFC, and that's not the way they play. Pozuelo and Piatti, it's very intricate, it's very inside anyway. But I think that's another level that they can bring, and maybe Morrow with a little bit more of a time off and a bit more physical ready can get forward a little bit more and create those crosses similar to the way we saw TFC play in 2017.
So just on last night, we talk about Justin Morrow getting a rest. The other player to get a rest was Quentin Westberg and Alex Bono coming in. And we've had Alex Bono on this show back in, I think it was back in when he played at Disney and got the 0-0 draw there against New England Revolution. He came on just after that, and we talked with him about, how difficult it is for a goalkeeper, especially, someone like him who is an MLS Cup winner. He was the man that was there when TFC went and won it all in 2017. To lose his place, and Greg Vanney has talked about Alex Bono and how impressed he has been with his mental approach in terms of always being switched on, driving himself all the time to get better. It's clear that Quentin Westberg is the number one goalkeeper right now. The choice that Greg Vanney has made, the way he wants to play out from the back, and Westberg has that ability. But TFC right now, and we saw it again last night, and Alex Bono deserves immense amount of credit for this, KJ, that he is able to come in a second start of the season, perform like that. There was one where he came across, tried to punch, didn't quite get there, but that was probably the only misstep all night that he made. They've got two number one goalkeepers, haven't they? Really?
Yeah,
they have got two number one goalkeepers. And I just wonder how long that can continue. And yes, they'd love to have Alex Bono as their backup. He's a great backup. But at what point does Alex Bono have to say, and he went to the championship to Barnsley in the offseason, didn't he, last January, to train there. But at what point does he have to say, I'm better than this?
Now is the point. Now's the time. And I think he already knows it. I think obviously he's not going to go into Ali Curtis in the middle of a playoff push and start to say, I've got to move. But I think Alex would admit that he's a very different goalkeeper and a very different young man than he was 12 months ago. I think he would admit that the chances have been, I don't think he's not been given enough chances to play, but that's obviously the unfortunate nature of being a backup goalkeeper where you are contending for one position. I think it's clear that he was waiting for an opportunity to prove to the rest of the league and maybe to himself again that he can go out there and do that on a consistent basis. And last night's 90-minute canvas was blank, and he went out there and it was an artist, and he painted an absolute perfect picture of the way that he can develop as a goalkeeper in Major League Soccer. And there's a lot of teams out there in MLS right now who have goalkeepers who aren't as good as Alex Bono. And they're looking at that going, okay, if you're not going to play him, we're going to get him. And I think Alex Bono has to cause that conversation to happen in the offseason for Toronto FC. He's 26 now. He's reaching the prime. He's better goalkeeper now than he was when he won MLS Cup. He may not be better in the eyes of Toronto FC than Quentin Westberg. And if that's the case, the fair thing to do would be to say, okay, well, we can have a good acquisition here, get some allocation money back or whatever it is and return it and give him the chance to go ahead and play, because he has to play, Stephen. And I think as the evidence showed last night, that he's a more than capable player of playing in this level. And, I think not only as a goalkeeper, but I think as a true leader, as a good example of a good person, he would be an outstanding asset to many MLS clubs.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that he is a starting goalkeeper in MLS. I think that he was rocked by the fact that he was, in a sense, discarded by TFC and Greg Vanny for Westberg, and he didn't get as many opportunities. I think the collateral he had built up, and I know he was having a rocky time when Westberg came in, but I think the decision was made really quickly that Westberg was number one and Bono would have very limited opportunities. And mentally, that really weighed on the lad. I think that his performance has dipped, his training potentially dipped, and you saw a goalkeeper who was struggling to work out who he was, what his identity was, and how he could get his career back on track. He's done that now. His career's back on track. He's training exceptionally well. He said that last night after the game. He feels like he's in his kind of best form. He knows who he is at 26 years old, the professional that he wants to be. Great guy, very good goalkeeper. Now, the question for me is, it's not a question, did TFC keep him into next season? I think that if I'm him, I'm going in there and saying, I need to go, I want to go. The question for me is, does he go to another MLS team or does he go to Europe? And does he go and maybe try his luck, I guess, in Europe, play with a championship, a League One team, or somewhere else in Central Europe to try and show his worth there. And I think he might even take a scenario where he has to go into another fight again to gain a number one spot. I think that would probably benefit TFC as well. I don't think they want this lad turning up in Minnesota or wherever it may be, San Jose. I'm thinking of some teams off the top of my head that might be interested in the goalkeeper and him then doing really well and coming back to bite them a little bit. So I think potentially Europe might be an option for him in the January KJ, but too good to be sitting on the bench. The time is now. He'll be a good pro. He'll stay till the end of the season and he'll do the right things. It's quite frankly a really awkward and difficult time to move clubs anyway, but he'll be pushing hard to get away.
The other thing too, quickly about Alex, is that he's a guy who obviously wears his emotions on his sleeve, and I think that, there's some people have said he's training better now, and I think it's fair to say that that time when he did lose his job, that we're human beings, and he may have struggled with it, but people like that, if you want them to be open and big leaders and big personalities when things are going well, you also have to understand when things are not going well, that they find it very difficult to hide their emotions. You can't have it both ways. You can't have a positive influence in the dressing room and be a good guy and be there for people and have a smile on your face when things are going well, and then suddenly things aren't going well. You just want him to be quiet and be himself. He had to go through that process to find himself a little bit more, to gain that confidence within himself, to make sure on a daily basis his commitments to his craft was there, understanding that it wasn't always just for TFC, it was for Alex Bono. And going forward, if TFC see him play at BMO Field in the future for another MLS team and he becomes an MLS All-Star, then that's too bad. They have to just understand that what they have to, if he is, as to Matthew's point on there, becomes another Stephen Fry, then that's okay. That's okay. You've got, if everybody believes that Quinton Westberg is a little bit better, then you have to go with your goalkeeper that you've got. You cannot also pay, by the way, what you're paying for a backup goalkeeper. It can give you financial flexibility to go somewhere else. So maybe Alex succeeds, and so does Toronto FC in the end if they use those funds successfully in other areas.
I don't think they want that though, Luke.
But as a club, you have to be confident in your decisions, don't you? You have to be like people would point to Mark Anthony Kaye and what happened there and turning up at LAFC and what he's managed to do. But he's very different now to when he left. And sometimes, different people see things out of different players. And I just think that, as KJ says, in a salary cap league, there aren't many MLS teams that are able to have two number one standard goalkeepers in Major League Soccer. And at some point, they're going to have to let him advance his career, aren't they?
Yeah, but well, the other question is, will Alex Bono ever have the real true profile of what Greg Vanny's looking for in a goalkeeper? Probably not, because his feet are getting better, but he's not going to spray the ball about like Westberg. He's not going to play the passes that Westberg plays, and that seems to be high up the list of what Greg Vanny wants in a goalkeeper. So to that point, Luke, then maybe it is to let the lad go. And Stephen Fry can't do that either, by the way. He's not got the Westberg ability, and so people leave football clubs for the right reasons in terms of what identity the manager sees the club playing in. And they may go on to have brilliant careers and they may develop, and sometimes that happens. I think it happens to the best clubs in the world. And in TFC, it's happened to them for sure. Mark Anthony Kaye is a great example. There's some other young lads there. Liam Fraser's another one who's going to want to be leaving this club sometime soon if his opportunities are still limited. And they're going to have to say, well, that's just football. On you go. Good luck to you. And if he comes back to being, a Canadian international, winning 50, 60 caps and playing in Europe or elsewhere in MLS, that's just one of the things. But when you're a proper big club, you make the decisions and you just say, all right, go on with it. This is the decision that we're making. This is the path that we're going. We're going to let Alex Bono go. We're going to get something considerable back for him. And we're going to go and recruit the profile that we want and the number 2 to push Quinton Westberg in the future.
There is the depth, though, there for Greg Vanney, as we've seen, and that's what TFC will hope will carry them forward over the next few weeks in a situation where they are playing pretty much 3 games a week between now and November 8th when Decision Day comes in Major League Soccer. And the next of those games is going to be a really intriguing match on Sunday as TFC play at home in Hartford, Connecticut, Pratt & Whitney Stadium at Rentschler Field against Columbus Crew, the side that right now is the standard in Major League Soccer. They won again last night against Minnesota. Zella Ryan has been such a great pickup for them. They've won 9, lost 1, and tied 3 so far this season. They've scored 22 goals along the way. They're 5 points clear at the top of the Eastern Conference. Tim Bezbatchenko, of course, former TFC general manager, is the president there. And you talked last night, and we'll get into this a little bit more later on, KJ, when we move on to the Whitecaps. But you've talked in the past about the different tiers that there are in Major League Soccer. And Columbus, while they're waiting for this move to the new stadium, just a couple of years ago, we're talking about a franchise that was going to move to Austin. Columbus was going to lose its team. It was a franchise that wasn't spending the money. And you talk about MLS 1, 2, 3. They certainly were down the bottom of those in terms of the clubs that you would tier within the league and their spending power and their future and where they can go. And now I think they're proving that they're certainly not in that top tier, right? They're not an MLS 1, but they're very close to the top of the next tier, pushing to try and, without that financial ability, try and compete by signing those players like Lucas Zella Ryan that has made such a difference.
Yeah, I think they are MLS 1 because I do think they punch above their weight. I actually think that MLS is better when they're better because, obviously there's a connection to the history of the club and, we don't need every single big market to be successful. You need those markets to prove to other markets how it's done. And yes, you have to eventually go out there and spend the money like small markets are considerably, many are doing now. We've seen Sporting Kansas City, stepping out of their comfort zone and spending $9 million on Pulido, getting the Zella Ryan $7 million. They understood that now was the time within MLS to take that next step. They needed a difference maker. You need a difference maker, and that makes everybody else better. We keep coming back to this, but that's what the Whitecaps don't have. You need that player who makes everybody else better on the field because you spend the money. And Zella Ryan has elevated Santos's game considerably, right? And then Nagby comes in and he has elevated Artur's game considerably, and they dominate midfield. And the rest of the pieces are already there, Stephen, because the continuity is there and they're used to playing with each other. So they haven't made massive overhauls. They've sprinkled in little dust areas. And then Zardes was a good pickup. He's an MLS, considerable player in this league. He knows what it's like. So that's the difference to me, is that if you have key players and you spend the money in those areas, the rest of the players are getting better because they're in that team. And Columbus is the best example. Like you and I were impressed with them from the start in Orlando. And in the end, they got knocked out of what you can happen in a knockout game. But for me, they look an enormous threat to make MLS Cup from the East.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're the best team in the East at the moment. They're putting everything together. They've recruited tremendously well. Tim Bezbatchenko deserves a lot of credit for that. The way that he's taken that money, and it's one thing having money. It's another thing spending it well. Getting it right. The DP is such a critical position in MLS, and Zella Ryan's been absolutely terrific. But I also think it's the pickup in Nagby, the trade to get Nagby. Sensational to do something like that, but it's like guys like Mensah who are playing better than they have done at the back there, who have took their game on to a level that we've seen before. We know he's capable, but I think at times too inconsistent in MLS. He's been awesome this season. Zarde's up top again. He'll put the ball in the back of the net if you get him the right service and you get the right pieces round about him. So everything's fitting for them at the moment. They're starting to bring in some fresh blood, some young guys like young Berhalter, Greg Berhalter, the US coach's son, who's terrific in the middle of the park there. He allows a bit of rotation between Nagbe and Arthur, who has been one of our favourite players, KJ, hasn't he? He came to MLS. We love him and the way he gets around the field. So I like a lot of things about them. I've just praised him, Bezbachenko, and he deserves it. But I also think Caleb Porter deserves a lot of credit for the way that he's starting to get the best out of that team. Distinct style, way of playing, some different options. You get the pace of Diaz in a wide area, and then you've got the skill and artistry of the Santos. So you keep everybody guessing all the time. You've got these different options, and they look like they're the team to beat. Excited for Sunday's game. I think TFC will be well up for it because they never like when anybody, it gets prominent in the East and sort of challenges their perch at the top there. So they're probably right up for this game to show that they're still one of the major contenders in the East.
We'll have it for you on TSN on Sunday night as TFC go home to Hartford and play Columbus Crew. Footy Talks presented by Benjamin Moore. Let's move on to some of the other action from around the league. Christopher says on the comments, the disparity between top and bottom MLS teams is far too great. Every couple of days, a team is getting beaten by 4 or 5 or more goals. Teams need to spend minimum salary cap or need to look at splitting into 2 divisions. If MLS is to grow as a league, no point a 30-team league when the bottom third are so far off and nothing is forcing them to improve.
Amen, brother.
Well, okay, teams conceding 4 or 5 goals.
One of the teams getting beat 4 or 5 a lot of times is San Jose. And
right.
They've money and they've got a top coach. And
so what's going on there?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we know he likes his style and his way of playing, and he will not waver. He will not adapt it in any way. And it does seem to be working in MLS at the moment. It seems way too inconsistent. I think it's went beyond inconsistent to the point where teams are...
Yeah, when you keep conceding 5-6 goals.
But they've conceded 5 goals 5 times.
They could still go out at the weekend and beat somebody comfortably because of the way that they play. But I think more often than not now, you're shaking your head, KJ, but more often than not now, teams are working at, with this man-for-man marking, the spare man drives the ball forward and then they're in big trouble and there's gaping holes all the way.
They've jacked it in. They're either they've jacked it in and had enough of Almeida, or they're getting together and they want Fiorinelli, the GM. Something's got to. Like, you must have you been in locker rooms, Stevie, at any point where you just think this is hopeless and everybody just, you don't have the conversation and say we're jacking it in, but you just feel that that's it. Something's got to change. There's no way back.
Yeah, I've definitely been in changing rooms where you feel like something drastically needs to change. I've never been in a changing room. I mean this sincerely, where people jack it in and say, I'm going to give 70% today. That never happens. But when you're unsure about what your job is, you're double guessing yourself the whole time. The manager is the one or the head coach who decides the tactics of the team, the way of playing, the way of going forward. If that's wrong for the makeup of that team, or it's going wrong, then questions are going to be asked. And what then happens is, if you've got no real leadership or togetherness within that changing room, guys then decide, well, I know the best way to play, and I know the best way to play, and then there's 3 or 4 options in there about what you should be doing as a team, and it just causes this rot, this indecision, this apathy, I guess, within a squad and within a group of players, and it's probably happening there. And there's only one man that can fix it, and that's Matias Almeida, and he's going to have to be a big man to fix it. He's going to have to either come up with the answers, like these days, players ask the coaches always, well, why am I doing this? And if you're hesitant and you don't have the answer to that why, you're in toast, you're in big trouble, So he needs to find the answers, or he needs to get these guys in the room and say, okay, we're going to change, what do you want? And I don't know if he's capable of that, KJ, saying, let's change, what do you want? I just think he's going to be stubborn, adamant to the end, this is the way of doing it, and it's probably his downfall.
Yeah, and I have no problem with that. Ultimately, if that's the way he wants to play, and that needs to be, if he starts changing things, then he's going to be even more of a joke. And he's even going to be even more questioning himself for the next job. He's obviously got to look at himself as a manager, as a leader, and stick to his styles. And what may not work at San Jose anymore may work perfectly the next time. The guy's not a chump. He won a Champions League. So, this guy knows what he's doing. Maybe it just doesn't work there anymore. My biggest problem, and to the point, I think it was Matthew, I can't remember who was it who just said it. Sorry, Christopher. The problem I have is that name me another league in the world that would allow a team to get consistently smashed every single week and have zero accountability. Somebody else would be fired in every other league in the world. They'd be fired because the fan base would riot. And then also they'd be in a league where they'd be looking at getting relegated. And that's the problem in this league, is there's zero accountability for failure consistently at time and time again. That's the biggest problem. So, okay, they're not going to make the playoffs again. They're not going to make the playoffs. Okay, well, next year maybe you'll make it. They're not going to make the playoffs. 10 teams make the playoffs. And they're not going to make the playoffs. And still people are going to keep the jobs. I don't want people to lose their jobs, but you have to have accountability in this league. It's what's going to push MLS going forward. It's what's going to drive the success of the league, the quality on the field. I don't want to see complacency. I understand we're in the middle of a global pandemic. I understand these teams are traveling from one state to another, from incredible weather conditions to another, the same day. I get the fatigue. I get it. We're evaluating all of that. And it's really difficult. And we're all so thankful that everybody has put up the effort to get there and have these leagues that going on that we can talk about it. I fully understand all of that. And you have to evaluate them very differently. But I do believe that complacency can set in. I think it's the reason why even the team that we talk about on this show more than others sometimes might concede goals late. Are they really thinking they need to win that game? Is it desperate? It's like, Stevie, when you're out there, do they smell it? Do they want it badly enough? And I want that league to be like that every single game. Do you want it badly enough? How do we get to the point where this 3 points means so much to you more than the 1 point? And that's promotion and that's relegation. That's MLS 1, MLS 2, MLS 3. That's what it is. And we may never see it, but that for me is the answer. I don't want teams dropping out of MLS and going to compete in the USL. So close it, but have a system where you're going to reward teams and to get to the top and keep moving forward. And if you win MLS 3, you can get in the playoffs as well and have a chance to win everything. For me, it's simple. We're rewarding far too many people for average performance every single week in the league.
Yeah, I just saw a comment there from Michael, who we were talking about Columbus and where they've come from and where they've gone to. Columbus used to be TFC's biggest rival. Busloads of supporters used to travel down. I remember being there for a few games, especially at the start of seasons when there were 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 TFC fans making the trip there. Incredible environment. But back then, and it was a couple of times, it was right at the very start of the season. And I remember TFC at one point on game day having players, first game of the season, flying in, signing their contracts in taxis on the way to the stadium, and then being put out and starting games. And it just jogged my memory there, talking about all those fans in Columbus.
I went to one of those games actually and stood with the TFC fans because I was on a road trip with mates going to March Madness games. It was very early April. I think TFC fans will know this more than me, but I think Colin Samuel missed a penalty.
Yeah,
it was 0-0.
Yeah,
and they lost 2-0, I think, and it was either the 2008, I think it was.
Yeah, there were a couple of times when all that kicked off. But you look at where the league has come from, and there's no doubt that it has. Like, players aren't now turning up in taxis and signing contracts on the way to games. That's what it was like. As teams were trying to, general managers. Certainly at TFC, probably because the revolving door was going round and round all the time, were scrambling still hours before kickoff of a game to make sure that players were there and signed and able to start games and stuff like that. The league has come an awful long way, but you look at the disparity now between some teams. I mean, okay, let's get onto it, KJ. We talked earlier in the show about your late night watching LAFC absolutely hammer the Whitecaps last night. I mean, the game was over after what was the fourth goal? I mean, the game was probably over at 2-0.
4-0 after 14. It was a
4-0 after 14. I mean, come on, that's and I only made it to halftime. I heard what you had to say at halftime and then went to bed. But
I only had like 45 seconds, but
it was a good 45 seconds. But, that isn't good for anybody, right? It's not good for Major League Soccer. And the way the Whitecaps just laid down, LAFC could have had 7 or 8 in that first half. It should have had a penalty. It was just incredible.
Yeah, it was incredible. And, you can talk about lying down and not putting a foot on it and chasing, bodies and all of that. And then I think Mark Dos Santos talked about that. I actually thought he was extremely classy last night. He didn't want to talk about fatigue or the travel or anything like that after the game, which I give him a lot of credit for. There was no excuses. But ultimately, I would say this: if LAFC are playing at their best like that last night, and by the way, Carlos Vela wasn't even on the field, but no matter what the Whitecaps do, they're never going to beat LAFC. If LAFC play at their best, that's the concern that I have. And I have to say, I get a lot of things wrong, but in the meeting last night, an editorial meeting we had, I was genuinely concerned. The producer said we need to talk about what if the Whitecaps win the game tonight. What does that do for them? I said, okay, that's fine. But if they do win tonight, it's enormous for them. But I just can't see it because I've watched LAFC a lot this season and they were out the playoffs. And there's a lot of things to still like about them. Defensively, there's some questions. But when they are on, Stephen, and you've got Diego Rossi and you've got Brian Rodriguez playing the way they're playing, Uruguayan internationals, who may miss some games, by the way, coming up if they go to the Commonwealth qualifiers. We'll see about that. But there's, you've got the Atuesta, K, Cifuentes midfield. For me, it was just, it's a significant wake-up call for the Whitecaps and other teams. If you're not watching that and remembering that and that feeling, LAFC have spent money. Of course they have. But they've recruited brilliantly. They've found real gems. And that's that. And when you go out and recruit these players, you can't have a squad, a bunch of roll of the dice guys. Okay, he might be good. We're going to sign him. We're going to roll the dice with him. He might perform. LAFC went out and signed players and have nurtured those players. Janela's going to be nurtured. Cifuentes is being nurtured right now. Blessing has reached that level. K's reached that level. Atuesta's at another level. Rodriguez. They're signing these players, Stevie, and they know what they're going to get when they get them, and they're making them better. And that's the difference. It's money, but it's recruitment, and it's what you do with them when you get them. And I just think there's so many things there that the Whitecaps need to learn from. And I think the disparity is alarming for the league.
Yeah, I like your last point there, KJ. What they're going to do when they get them. So they know why they're recruiting a certain player, his profile, his upside, his selling potential, his age, his role within their system, within their franchise, their team, their group. And that's key. And that's the problem for the Whitecaps specifically. Where is that lad going to fit in? The recruitment's been, quite frankly, poor to awful with the Whitecaps. They've barely got one right. And even the ones that come that have a little bit of potential and an idea that they could have a successful time, and I'm thinking Mom as an example of that, they don't know where to play them. And they don't have any consistency to the style that they play to actually get the best out of the lad. They never worked out in a year of being there what his best position was, where he could really play and be most effective. And in fairness to Mbom, his brain was probably scrambled at the end because he'd been asked to play 6, and he'd been asked to play 8, he played 10, he sometimes played a little wide. It's just all over the place. Whereas when you're a LAFC player, Cifuentes, Janela's a good example, even the ones that go wrong, like Andre Horta, they know what they're coming in to do. They've got a chance to go and get on with that, to progress. Rob Bradley has a style that the game plan is always on the same theme. And so these guys are allowed time to nurture. And at the Whitecaps, that's not happening. There's no consistency. And I think maybe last night was they were a victim of their own recent success in that so they defend pretty well and they go back to the base. There's always let's get back to basics and defending. And then they win a couple of games and they get a little bit more expansive. And as soon as they try and go and build on that, it's back to square one. They've just been embarrassed 6-0. So next game, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to be back to 2 blocks. It's going to be back to defensive. They're going to try not to concede goals. And they're going to try to hang in the game. And come out with a positive result. And it always seems to be 1 step forward, 2 steps back for them at the moment. So there's so many things to work on. There's so many things that need to happen at that football club before they even get on the path to success, never mind anywhere near a team like a Seattle or an LAFC.
And this is the big divide right now, Luke. You talk about earlier about players being signed in cabs, right? No one's being signed in cabs anymore. But people are still being signed on the basis of an agent recommendation or a quick video. And we've spoke to people in other clubs. I've spoke to Garth Lagerwey in Seattle. Thorrington's been spoke about people on this. These guys have so many contacts and they put so much work in. And then you go out and get players who are being looked at in Europe, envious of these players playing at that club. And that's the elite level of MLS now. You got to recruit at that level. There's so many players in this world who look at MLS going, I want to come to MLS. Look what Atlanta did. Okay, it's gone wrong for a little bit now for them. But then at least they knew when to punt, and they still made money on Pity Martinez, by the way. So, you've got to get better. That's the biggest problem right now, is that people can say it's money, but you've still got to recruit really well. And you've got to have smart people in those. The other thing about the Whitecaps for me is that there may well be pieces right now on that team that can be part of the next successful Whitecaps team. There may well be. We could go around, everyone could be talking about Veselinovic or Cornelius or whoever it is. But right now, they're being haunted because their development is being stunted by the fact that their recruitment has been, Stevie said, poor. It's been abysmal. Okay? Abysmal. That's what it's been. You look at the amount of players they've signed over the last 3 seasons, the amount of money they've thrown at those players, and for the most part, most of them have been thrown back. They're bringing the fish in, they're looking at it, they go, we don't want to eat you, we're throwing you back in the water. That's what they're doing. They're not developing them. There's nothing there. And I feel sorry for Mark DeSantos because it shouldn't be his position. He's there to coach. The recruitment's got to improve. But those guys, those gems that you might have, are getting haunted because you're not producing players around them. So it's a real concern for the Whitecaps. I'm not quite sure where they're going on it. And as I said, I've had more time to talk about it here, but last night should be a night they need to remember, not one they want to forget, because they should remember what that feels like, and you don't want to be embarrassed, and you got to go out there and figure out how you can get closer to those teams. No one's asking you to go out and compete against LAFC every week, but why can't you get closer to the other teams? It's an immediate wake-up call for ownership to spend more money, but also work harder on your recruitment and find gems that other teams are envious of. Because right now there are very few players on the Whitecaps team that anybody in MLS goes, we wish we had him.
2 years ago tomorrow was the day that the Whitecaps fired Carl Robinson and decided to make the change there. 2 years on, well, they're no further forward, are they? Absolutely.
No, they're no further forward, and that's frustrating from a Whitecaps fan base because it has to be said, Bob Lenarduzzi, when he came out, and I know he's not involved anymore, but the reasoning for firing Carl Robinson was we are a playoff team. The next step we're going to be is a championship team. And I'm sorry, but how foolish does that look at the moment? And the Whitecaps fans, it is a wonderful city to live. It is a wonderful city to appeal to players. There's an intelligent fan base there that love the game. There's so many things that could get right. They've got that rivalry with great cities like Seattle or Portland. There's a lot of things that can go right for it. But right now, the people who are making the decisions there are getting too many things wrong. Too many things wrong. And back to my point earlier about the point about San Jose, there's not enough accountability for consistent failure in Major League Soccer. And that's the thing. That's what's holding the league back compared to all the leagues around the world. You name the league, Portuguese league, Italian league, Mexican, it doesn't matter what the leagues are. There are examples, so many of them around the world, that if you don't succeed, the performance is affecting the results and jobs are lost. So it's a difficult time for a Whitecaps fan. I feel for them. I really do, because even their DP man last night, he wasn't trusted to play in the game. They spent over $1 million on a left back, and you don't trust him in the game because defensively you can't trust him to play in a match like that. Now, it's the right decision, but again, it's another decision that they've got wrong in terms of recruitment.
10 minutes to go on the Footy Talks show this week. So let's get quickly around some of the other leagues in the world. KJ, you watch pretty much everything there is to watch right now. What's the best game that you've seen in the last week?
Well, United.
Yeah.
No, we're not talking about, no. Right?
Who's going down with Sheffield United this year? I keep asking you.
Big relegation trouble for Sheffield United this year.
Yeah, have you got anybody who can score goals, or do you just want to whinge about bad red card decisions? How's that? Which one?
I didn't say anything about a red card decision. Nor did I last night when I saw you. I've not even mentioned that.
And I haven't mentioned it to you. Stevie's just loving. He's just throwing a hand grenade into the show right now.
Or missed penalties. We've got strikers coming in.
Okay, well, you'll need them.
There's still a transfer window open.
Which game did I really like? There's lots of games like I really liked. The Premier League last week had 44 goals in 10 matches. Just truly remarkable to watch the amount of goals going in. We had a question earlier about Everton. I think I really enjoy watching Everton at the moment. There it is right there from Luke. What makes this year spending and transfer over a different one? They bought a midfield, Luke. As you know, if you're an Everton fan, that makes a massive difference. Decore and Allen have been brilliant. And James Rodriguez has taken to the Premier League like a duck to water for all those people questioning, can he really play in the Premier League? Well, a lot of nonsense that was. He's a quality world-class player that is running the show. And Stevie, it was great to watch him play last week. I know against West Brom, eventually went down to 10 men. But I think Carlo's got a little bit of a good style going on right now. And those who didn't hear Carlo Ancelotti's press conference when he talked about Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I thought was really insightful too, when he said, strikers need to score goals with one touch. I had a guy called Pippo Inzaghi who scored 300 goals and he scored over 220 of them with one touch. And that's what he's worked with Calvert-Lewin. And I think that's fascinating. You can elevate that to any league or any team that you want to watch right now. Your striker needs to score with one touch. So there's a genuine excitement about Everton right now. I don't think they're going to challenge for a top four, but I think that's what you need if you're Everton. You need to bring entertainers and you need to have a team that's going to compete week in, week out and not lose 2 or 3 times every 6 weeks to a Brighton or a Fulham, for example, Stevie.
Yeah,
or a Villa.
No, I don't think they're going to lose to us.
I think it's the same theme, isn't it? We just spoke about with the Whitecaps identity, isn't it? It's a guy an Ancelotti who has an identity, knows what he wants from his strikers and his midfield players. And James Rodriguez is a great example. If Carlo Ancelotti signs you 3 times, guys, you're a pretty good player, and he knows what you're good at. So what he's going to do is he's going to allow the lad to excel by asking him to do the things that he's really good at. His goal's a great example of that. I was speaking with my brother Gary and I said, if they can get him into that position 40 times in a season, he's going to score 15 to 20 goals. He just does not miss when he gets the ball in a bit of space 20 yards out. And so that's the key, like, as your identity, to get this guy, play off the wide area, but drift in at the right times when the space appears, and get the ball into him, get it into wide areas, get crosses in to Calvert-Lewin. He's going to score 15 to 20 goals if they get crosses into him. Richarlison's your gem moving around the field. The one area, or 2 areas I should say, where I think they've still got problems is centre-half and goalkeeper. I still don't believe that they have guys consistent enough to get them into the top 4 in their positions. But guess what? When he gets another window, that's probably the position he's going to look at and he's going to strengthen. And the value in having a world-class manager like that, a guy who's been there and done it at the best teams in the world, and he brings that big-time mentality to a club like Everton, is immeasurable. You cannot put it into words how important somebody like that is to the football club. So I'm excited to see how they go this season as well, KJ. I still think they'll lose goals and lose games, but I really think the 2 guys we mentioned there, James Rodriguez and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, will be roaring successes. One of my favourite games was Liverpool, Chelsea. I know there was a man sent off, but I thought that Liverpool showed a different style to what we're accustomed to with them. It was less energy, less kind of vertical football and more control. I'm sure Thiago played a major part in that control, and I think that as they move forward with him in the middle of the park, they are going to bring a different identity. It's something that they're going to need heading into their 3rd season of incredible consistency. I just don't think that you could ask the same front 3 and the majority of the same players to keep up that level of energy. So I think that a bit more control in games and a bit of different style of play will suit them, and I've got renewed hope for them potentially retaining their title, where at the start of the season I was adamant that they couldn't win it again. But now that I'm looking at Klopp's evolution as a tactical evolution as a coach at Liverpool, I find it quite interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how they develop, KJ, as the season goes on. Yeah,
and Fabinho at centre back was brilliant. We were talking about that last night, weren't we? Yeah, he was just, and obviously getting a player of Thiago Alcantara's quality. There's no player like that at all right now, and the fact that they can bring him in is probably one of the few players who can make them instantly better. So, lots of excitement for the Premier League being back, and maybe big derby on the weekend for you coming up, Luke. Your 2 teams, Leeds against Sheffield United.
Yeah, I can't lose at the weekend, can I? Really?
Well, I mean, if you're a Blades fan, you would say that you could lose if you desperately need the points.
But even again at the weekend, Leeds beating Fulham 4-3. Bielsa's a goal fest continues. And then I was watching. I saw a bit of the Spurs game against Southampton.
That's a crazy match.
Yeah,
crazy match.
And we got a question there from Michael saying, "What will Gareth Bale's return do for Tottenham?" You know what? I've loved seeing, and I haven't watched the whole thing yet because anyway, doesn't matter. But I've seen some clips on YouTube of the Amazon Prime.
I've watched it all. You've got to watch it.
Good documentary, right?
Really good.
Well, I've got to pay money to get it, and anyway, doesn't matter. No.
So you won't be seeing it then.
We don't need to get into it now, but I'm already paying, but I don't know what the login is, and I can't get in touch with. And anyway, it doesn't matter.
Sound like Stevie trying to get into his work email.
There are two things that are certain in life. One is that Stevie will turn up and say, "I need computer assistance" every time we do any kind of show at TSN. I've forgotten my password is. And the other thing is that about 90 seconds before this show's about to start, he'll send an email or a message saying, "Can someone send me the link, please? Because I haven't got it. I can't find it."
We have to add another one that you two don't know about. But when you guys call the game and you go and you throw back at halftime, coming on next, Kelsey and KJ, we always hear Stevie put his headphones down.
Is that right?
Every time on the air.
Because we're so desperate to get off for a cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way,
so you haven't seen it yet, Luke.
I haven't seen it yet, but we were talking a little bit about it earlier in terms of conversations between managers and players and the way you approach situations like that, and TFC having to have a conversation with someone like an Alex Bono and tell him his place and all that sort of thing. Some fascinating insight into some of the conversations that are being had between players and Jose Mourinho, and just how I think it was it Danny Rose that was in there having a conversation with Mourinho, and it seemed to go wrong quite quickly in terms of, if you've got a manager who is such a big personality and a player who's such a big personality, things can go off the rails quite quickly, Stevie, in terms of those conversations that you have. You must have been in a few situations like that where you're having to, you've either got to tread carefully around the manager, or, sometimes you can have that relationship with the manager where everything's open and honest, and you can have those frank discussions without it hurting you. Yeah,
I think it's down to your personal relationship with a manager. It's something that can be built up over time. But the key that I want to bring up here, and I noticed from Mourinho's chat with Danny Rose, is that the player comes in emotional, right? You don't go see the manager when you're scoring hat-tricks and you're playing well, because it's fine, you're playing. You go and see the manager when you're out of the team, and you have this idea of why you should be in the team, and you think you're right. Of course you have to. You need that confidence. And he obviously picks the best 11 that he sees fit. And so the player comes in emotional, and the manager can't tackle that with emotional, KJ. The manager needs to be calm. He needs to be direct, and he needs to be clear in why he made these decisions. And it was a masterclass from another world-class manager and how to get your point over. Like, he was pretty to the point in terms of why he wasn't playing, but he never lost his cool. He kept his emotion. Rose tried to change his words, and he went back to, no, that's not what I said. This is what I said. And it was genius, real genius from Mourinho. And I'm only about 4 or 5 episodes in, but I'm loving this documentary. And I must say, I've always been a big fan of Mourinho's, but I think it's fascinating to get this kind of level of insight into how he goes about his business. And I thought it was unbelievable, the one where he tells the squad that his dog's died. And he's so emotional. I'm not laughing. I'm just, he just comes out with, my dog died. And the guys are like,
Christmas Eve.
Yeah. And he's like, this is why I'm in a bad mood. And so, if you think that I'm in a bad mood with you, please, guys, no, I'm just so distraught. My dog's dying. He almost looks like he's going to cry out a bit, Luke. He's that.
I haven't seen that one.
He's like going to cry, and he just gets to sit there. And again, it's mastery. It's true leadership. It's a way showing himself to be vulnerable in front of his guys and allowing himself to come across as human. And then he goes into team talk. I'm sure he probably told the team at that point or whatever, and all of a sudden you've just humanized the guy who you see as, your barrier or your key leader in terms of your success, So these little things are absolutely key. Ancelotti's, the Mourinho's, the Klopps, the Guardiola's, they're experts at it.
Did you ever have a manager that wasn't an expert at it?
Yeah,
who would meet fire with fire and start to
disaster, disaster. Yeah,
Roy
Keane, definite example of that. Just blew up every single time to the point where you know, I had my argument with him. It lasted 5 minutes, and you know, he said, you know, why are you trying to leave? And you'll be staying at this club. Brilliant, thanks. Went out the room, felt good. Got a call that night. It was in Asda. Go speak to Burnley. You're leaving. I'm like, what? Just changed his mind like that. You know, emotional. Lee Clark was another one. So emotional. You know, a true winner on the pitch, Lee Clark, but a guy as a manager who just wants to fight fire with fire. Can't do it. You can't do it with these guys because there's no rationalising the decision with a player because he wants to play. He only has really deep down his own career in his mind. He just wants to play, like, desperately. You know, he wants to be in that team, and so the manager needs to be direct and be clear, be honest, absolutely. But you can't get emotional. You need to be relaxed with it, KJ.
Yeah, the other thing for me came out with the documentary Mourinho is that it was, for me, the overriding, one of the biggest overriding images is early in the series when Mourinho's getting to become to Spurs, and the Sky Sports News is everywhere. So it's in the canteen, they're all eating the food, and the screens are up, and Mourinho's lifting European cups and everything, and the guys are eating it, and their eyes are wide. And they're just looking at this guy like he's some kind of superhero coming in, like this Mourinho's coming into the team. And you can see that even when he comes in, that obviously he's trying to galvanize the team, but he's idolized by these guys instantly. And I don't think that's actually a good thing. And I think he's recognizing that that's not a good thing. Because when you look at the Spurs team, and this is back to the point about Bale with Michael, they lack anybody who's ever won anything. So, they all trying to get to this level. How are you going to win? How are you going to win? And he says it a number of times. They've actually got quite a lot of choir boys, really. You know, every time they show the pre-game huddle right before they're about to go out, they all get around in the huddle, and whoever's captain, Kane, Winks, Lloris, whoever it is, they give this little bit of a speech, but it's almost a comical speech, really, because they say it's about 5 swear words in there, and let's just go get them. And it's just like, if I'm a player, I'm not exactly. I mean, Stevie gets me more motivated about that in the pre-game show for our show at TSN. So it's like I don't
really... the butter chicken though. That's because he's really on fire.
Right, but I didn't feel like that those guys are going to inspire me. Do you know what I mean? I don't feel like they're nice guys, but I don't feel like they're going to inspire me. I'm going to run through a brick wall for these guys. And so, what comes along now? Well, what happens? Well, they go get Bale, and he's not an inspiring character either, but he's a winner. And I think Mourinho recognizes he needs people, like every team. You need your marshals in that place to do your work for you as well. You need leadership people away from you to set that up. And as much as Kane and those guys, his captain, I'm not sure that those guys are doing that. They're quiet leaders, and I think that might be the next step for Spurs. That's what I got out of it. Dele Alli still making baked beans in his microwave. That you probably haven't seen that yet, Stevie. I think that's on episode 7 or something. Yeah. So, picking his favorite chocolate bars, and now he's obviously a terrible trainer and he's out the team, so he's not one to be trusted. So there's a lot of things to like out of the show. It's a good show. It's obviously those things when you can see them behind the walls, the fly on the wall documentaries. It's fascinating, but the way they idolized the guy, I thought was really striking from my point of view as well. But yeah, you need to pay for it, Luke.
You've sold it to me. Instead of watching Schitt's Creek 5 episodes on Netflix each night now this week, I'm gonna try and get my second Amazon Prime account now and see.
I've never seen this Schitt's Creek. Is it good?
No, I hadn't until the other night when it won the awards, and I've started watching it. It is pretty good, yes.
I've got sports on in my house all the time. My son's sports mad, watching the Indian Premier League this morning. The cricket's going on. I mean, it's just awesome right now. By the way, talking of cricket, a quick story. The great Dean Jones passed away today.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, tragic. I mean, I've got my cricket bats behind me for anyone who's watching. A quick story about Dean Jones. So Dean Jones was an Australian cricketer, passed away from a serious heart attack by all accounts today in India, where he was commentating on the Indian Premier League. In 1989, in the Ashes series in England, the Australian team were in England, and it was raining at Edgbaston Cricket Ground, and Dean Jones saw a little boy with a pen and a tour guide wanting to get some Australian cricket autographs, and came out and took that little boy's pen and book and took it into the dressing room and got all the Australian players to sign it. Came out and said to that little boy, "One player's not there right now. Are you back tomorrow?" And I said, "Yes, I'll be here tomorrow." He goes, "I'll come find you tomorrow and I'll take it back in and I'll go get that player." And Dean Jones came back out and got that. And that little boy was me. And I've never, ever forgot it. And he was always my favorite player, an elegant player. And, God rest his soul. Never forgot him. And, sad day today to see him pass away at he had a fantastic innings in cricket, but 59 is no innings for anybody in life.
and people here probably don't get it, but a day at the cricket was like incomparable. Just going, and you could spend all day. Obviously, you've got your lunch, you've got your dinner that you're going to eat while you're at the cricket. People here would say, "Wow, this thing goes on for all day and all night, and like following day as well." But like Yorkshire used to come and play in Abbeydale in Sheffield. They'd play a few home games per season there, and Derbyshire would play at Queen's Park in Chesterfield. So I was sort of in Dronfield, which was in between those two places. So every time there was a county match, you'd go and sit there. You'd be there for the whole of the play. But there are certain points during the day where you would get up, you can walk around, you can look for players, you can get autographs. The ball cup, some guy standing near the boundary, he'll come and he'll take sign an autograph for you, that sort of thing. It was just like great days, right? Great days. And it's I don't watch anywhere near as much now of cricket as I used to. I was a wicket keeper. I was sometimes an opening batsman, but I was a very, it won't surprise you to know, I was a conservative opening batsman, right? So we would play ever many overs it was as a kid when I was 13, 14. But you had to retire when you got to 20 runs or 25 to let the next player in. And then you could come back in after if everyone had played. Right?
Just stay in and keep blocking.
Correct. I managed to get through a whole game without getting to 25 runs. Just managed to stay.
You sound like so there's a quick story that's actually got a football connection. So you remember the show Fantasy Football League with Frank Skinner and Badil and Stato. Yeah. So Stato once walked onto a Test cricket match when Chris Tavare was opening the batting for England, and Chris Tavare was boring everybody so much, just blocking everything. Now is the day of the Indian Premier League. I just watched K. Rahul got over 100 in the 2020 game this morning. Now, these guys are blocking it, getting like 10 in 2 hours. Stato gets so sick of it, he walks out to the front of and puts a chair down and asks him to sit down. So you gotta YouTube it. It's brilliant. That's actually happened. So no, for me, the cricket, watching sport in the morning is very unique. It's what people like about golf, going to the Open Championship or walking around in golf. Watching the peace and quiet of watching sport in the morning is something to treasure. And I'll always treasure those memories and continue to love the great sport. And God rest his soul, Dean Jones.
Yeah, good story. And Cricket Talks Live returns next week at the same time, where we might squeeze a bit of Footy Talks in as well. We'll do a tour of all the different sports and everything that we know and all our memories. I don't know if it's just the time, just because everything that's been going off, the more time you've had, but I've been thinking much more about memories of the past and all sorts of stuff, like over the past few months. Maybe it's because the last few months have had very little in terms of things to look forward to with what's been going on. But those days at the cricket were fantastic. Okay, Sunday night, there won't be much cricket talk I wouldn't expect in a TFC Columbus broadcast, but you never know. I mean, Stephen even managed the word laborious within the game last night, which was first time I think I've heard him pull that one out.
That's a good one, Steve. Hey? Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So we'll see you on TSN. KJ? Details?
I believe we're on live. Pre-game show at 7. We have a pre-game show this week. 7 and 7:30 kickoff for, as I look at my calendar, Toronto FC against Columbus, followed by Whitecaps at home to Portland at 10 in Portland.
Strange.
That works well.
What can go wrong?
Exactly. Poor White.